two. Okay, on to part two for the digestive system. Okay. Okay. So, okay. So make sure you get those two types of cells and understand what they do. Okay. And now let's go back and cover the stomach. I should have covered this in part one, but I completely forgot. Okay. So here is the actual stomach. The stomach actually has 3 layers of muscle instead of the usual 2. So there's more mixing. Okay. Also included in the stomach are these little folds called rugae. Rugae, the purpose of rugae is to increase surface area. Okay. So it can stretch incredible amounts. Like if you want, 4th of July, the people shoving in like 200 hot dogs in their stomach, that's because of the rugae. Okay? So the last part is this part right here, the pyloric sphincter. Pyloric literally means gates, and you can see that it looks like a little pair of gates. Okay? So the churning goes on in her stomach, and that hole is open, but that hole is small. So every time the stomach tries to shove stuff in, most of it bounces back, and only a little bit of it goes into the small intestine. Okay? So in addition to being a place for digestion, it's also a place for storage of food. Okay? So when we eat, we store food in our stomach, which is slowly digested by the intestine. Okay? You slowly leak food into the intestines. Okay. All right. The three parts of the small intestine, duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. Okay. Okay. So receives the small intestine, the duodenum, receives digestive enzymes and bile. Okay. So the main pancreatic duct and the common bile duct enter the duodenum. They actually enter through the same hole, and that the big hole is called the major duodenal papilla. Okay, so the liver produces something called bile. The pancreas creates something called pancreatic juice. We'll talk about what those two are in a second. But the first thing is that it enters through that little hole called the major duodenal papilla. Okay, with the addition of the enzyme from the pancreas and from the bile, the digestion part is actually finished in the small intestine right here. Okay, you do not have to be able to distinguish the jejunum from the ileum because they're pretty much the same. You do have to distinguish the duodenum from the other two, but the duodenum is easy. It's this C-shaped thing that wraps around the head of the pancreas. Okay. All right. This you definitely have to understand as well. There are 3 modifications for absorption in the small intestine, and there are circular folds, the villi, and the microvilli. Okay? The circular folds are these transverse ridges of the mucosa and submucosa. So what you see are here. Okay? These ridges. These ridges, when food travels through these ridges, they don't travel straight through, they spin. And as they spin, the spinning causes the food to push against the outside. It's the same way your dryer works. Your dryer pushes the clothes against the outside. When you do this with food, you come in contact with the wall, and that causes the absorption rate to increase. Okay? The other thing, the villi and microvilli, okay? The villi increases the border, and then the microvilli increases the border even further, okay? So needs to increase the surface area for absorption. If you guys have eaten intestines before, I'm sure you know what intestines look like. There are little pieces that look like little pieces of carpet. Okay, the little carpet things are the villi, and the microvilli are on the cell, so you can't see that. Okay, this is also known as the brush border. The microvilli is known as the brush border. Okay, if you delete the brush border, it makes it really hard to absorb nutrients, and that is the basis of celiac disorder or celiac disease. But and that comes with eating gluten-free and stuff like that. But the reality of it is, people who claim to need to eat gluten-free mostly don't. And the study literally says 99 out of 100 people who actually claim to need gluten-free food don't. But it's great for that one person, but other people, you're really just paying extra for nothing. So, you might as well donate that to a charity of your choice. So now, food is moving on to the next portion, the large intestine. Okay? The large intestine, okay, is here. So food comes in here, it goes into the large intestine, okay? This is the cecum. This first part is cecum. This last part is the ileum. So the valve between the cecum and ileum is the ileocecal valve. Okay, so oops. Okay, so here the food enters. Okay, this part is the little appendix. Okay, this is cecum. Food usually goes up this way. Okay, it goes up this way. The going up part is called the ascending colon. Okay, the ascending colon turns, and it turns into the hepatic flexure. Okay, the hepatic flexure then turns into the transverse colon. The transverse colon turns into the splenic flexure. Okay, because your liver's right here, your spleen's right here. Okay, and then coming down is the descending colon. The descending colon goes into the S-shaped thing called the sigmoid colon. And then the sigmoid colon ends up in the rectum and then the anal canal. Okay? So you're definitely responsible for the parts of the of the large intestine. Okay? Okay. So there's the rectum, there's the rectal valve so it's stored in here, the feces stored in here. The rectal valve allows gas to pass through without actually material passing through. And then that is the anal canal where you poop everything out. Okay. All right. The large intestine, the functions of the large intestine. Okay. Basically, by this time, a lot of the nutrients are absorbed, but there's still a little bit left. There's a lot of bacteria that live in your large intestine, including E. coli. These guys will actively eat whatever you have left, and their byproducts you can absorb as nutrients. Some electrolytes and some vitamins, including vitamin K and vitamin B12, are actually made by the bacteria here. Okay? So basically, the other thing you do is reabsorb the rest of the water and the electrolytes. Okay. All right. All right. So now let's talk about the liver and the pancreas. Okay. The liver is the largest gland in the body. It performs over 500 different functions. The digestive function of the liver, however, is bile production. Okay, it produces bile. So here's the liver. the liver has 4 quadrants: right quadrant, left quadrant, and you flip it over to the other side, you have the caudate lobe and quadrate lobe. Sorry, quadrate lobe down here. That's the gallbladder. Okay, the gallbladder is usually green, because of the staining purposes of the bile. Actually, it's kind of rare to see it this color. Okay, that's why they color it green in pictures. It's usually green. Okay, so here's the liver. Okay, the liver's job is to produce bile. Okay, so here you can see what the liver actually looks like. Okay, so here you can see the hepatic triad. The blue tube here is the vein. The green tube is the bile ducts, and then the red tube is the artery. Okay, so the liver needs fresh blood coming from the hepatic artery. This blue tube actually is from the hepatic portal system. If you remember the portal system, the blood needs to come from the stomach and intestines to the liver for detox. So here it's branching out for detox. All of this stuff eventually goes into a central vein and then back into the circulation. Okay. Okay. The purpose of bile is to emulsify fat. Okay. Emulsification is not digestion. Okay. Emulsification is mixing. So if you take oil and water and you put it in a bottle, you can shake the bottle up as hard as you want. The oil and water eventually separate. That is because the oil and water don't mix. If you add soap and you shake it up, the water and oil does mix. And the reason is because the soap is the emulsifier. Okay? It allows the oil and water to mix. In here, the bile allows the digestive, the fat that you eat to mix into the digestive enzymes you made. Okay? That allows the two to mix together and allows for digestion to occur much faster. Okay? Okay. The pancreas, okay? Now we're going to talk about the exocrine function of the pancreas. Okay, we were talking about the endocrine function. That was chapter 17. The exocrine function is to produce pancreatic juice. Okay, the pancreatic juice, okay, is made of these things called zymogen granules. Okay, zymogen is enzyme generating. Okay, so the pancreas produces a huge amount of enzyme that are needed for digestion. Okay, you make these enzymes as zymogens because if you activate them, they'll digest the pancreas. And one of the things about pancreatic cancer is that it tends to activate these zymogen granules on its own, and that will digest the pancreas. So you make these inactive enzymes, zymogens, and you release them into the small intestine. And in the small intestine will make enzymes that turn on these zymogens, so they digest the food inside the small intestine and not inside the pancreas. Okay? So the enzymes are activated in the duodenum or duodenum. Okay? All right. Peptic ulcers. Okay. Ulcers are erosions of the mucosa of the region of the alimentary canal. So they can be gastric, they can be duodenal, or they can even be esophageal. Okay? Okay. This is a bacteria. This is H. pylori. These are this is the most common cause of gastric ulcers. Okay, now they're just treated with antibiotics, but they used to be one of the most common surgeries to treat for a gastric ulcer. Okay. All right, the different disorders of the digestive tract. Internal obstruction, either physical obstruction, okay, like a mass that blocks away, okay, or non-mechanical obstruction is a halt in peristalsis due to trauma or due to intestines being touched during surgery. I don't know why that happens, but it does, okay. Okay. Inflammatory bowel disease, inflammation of the intestinal walls, Crohn's disease, or ulcerative colitis. Okay. Viral hepatitis. Um, the symptoms of viral hepatitis, jaundice, okay, and flu-like symptoms. There's a couple of major types. Type A. Type A is actually a sexually transmitted disease. Type B and C are not sexually transmitted diseases, but they're much more lethal. Okay. Cystic fibrosis primarily affects the lungs, but it also affects the pancreas as well. The pancreatic ducts can become blocked, and that can prevent the pancreatic juice from entering the small intestine. Okay, and that leads to malabsorption of fat and other nutrients. Okay, because the pancreatic juice is where all the enzymes are. Okay, all right, that ends this presentation. Okay.